I love horror and I love to write for it, but the one kind of horror I can't get myself to write, despite it being the type of horror that finally got me into the genre itself, was zombie horror. Part of me is like really picky with my zombie horror, and a part of it is just because a lot of what I like tends to start becoming stale to me once they get over the horrors of surviving in the post-apocalyptic world. The Walking Dead is the biggest example of this to me, but like, in my personal opinion, I think the show should have ended after the whole Negan arc, and yes, I've read the comics, I know they go on much longer than that, but I was just like, after that point in the show, I was just like, okay, the show's run its course. But that's my opinion. But regardless, I am also a big gamer, and I find myself drawn more to the zombie games than books and shows, probably because the stories have to be a bit more condensed, and maybe it's the gameplay factor. So I thought, since Halloween is coming up, depending on when I upload this, that it'd be fun to rank all the zombie games I played, from the most ass-water game of the group to the one that I rotate my head around and giggle at it, because I have a lot of zombie games I really like. And I do want to clarify that this is only for games that I have played. Not you, me. So if you're gonna go and be like, you haven't played this game before, the answer is, at the time of this video, no, I have not. Also, I'm using a bit of a loose definition of zombie game. I found a list on Wikipedia that I've been referencing off of, so some of these could be like anything from like Telltale's The Walking Dead to like Minecraft, so FYI. The game might not be about zombies itself, just may contain the presence of zombies. And through this I also want to kind of dissect the games, talking about what I like about them, and maybe somehow I could find out what exactly draws me to these kind of stories. Possibly. I don't know yet. I wrote the script. My ranking is based off of what, if I had like fun with the game, if the story was good, if I liked the characters, and just like how impactful it was to me, even if the game itself may not be like the most critically well received. That part is never important to me, but I know a lot of people have critiques about games that I personally really enjoy. I'm sorry, Fallout 4 is still my favorite Fallout game. All that matters to me in the end is that I think I'm right. And I am. So you may not agree with me, and that's fine, but I don't really want to hear about how much you don't. Just saying. And if you're curious about what games I have listed on here, I will have them down in the description in alphabetical order, so not to spoil the rankings I give the game, so you can't just look into the comments to see why I rank them. You just have to be like, oh, these are the games that you're going to be talking about. So yeah, I'm going to be also going into spoilers for every single one of those games, hence why I'm listing them. So if there's like a game that came out fairly recently that you yourself want to go into like completely blind, that's your warning. There you go. But first, let's get to the art for this video. I have a ton of leftover time lapses, so I'm going to just be like inserting them into this. So you'll be seeing stuff from like Artfly, you'll be seeing stuff from like pieces I've drawn earlier this year, commissions, things like that. So there you go, a lot of stuff. I know there's a couple that I have already used as the art for videos, but like in speed paint form rather than like time-lapse form. Thank you, Clip Studio Paint. So you might be seeing a repeat of some of the stuff I've drawn. Now that's out of the way, let's get started on the worst game on this list, because we are starting from the bottom, so we can only go up. And that game is Resident Evil 5. Every time I tell people that I think it's a bad game, I get one of three responses. The people who think I'm right, like a person with taste would. Someone who is a lot younger, who remembers the game through a nostalgic lens, which is very valid. I've had people say they like the game just because they played it when they were kids. And I have plenty of games on this list that fall under that. Or the kind of chronically online person who thinks I should die for my opinions, like people on TikTok. Resident Evil 5 is the worst zombie game I have ever played, and I am going to tell you why I think that people who think this game is good is wrong. And you're probably thinking, oh, it's the most problematic of the Resident Evil games, so that's why you don't like it, because of the racism. And the answer to that is no. I actually went into this game not knowing that. I had bought this game along with Resident Evil 6 and Resident Evil 4 for Switch, and I played it on Switch, and before you say anything, no, the Switch gameplay has nothing to do why I dislike this game. You're just gonna have to sit with me through this. So for those who don't know, Resident Evil 5 is a 2009 game that follows Chris Redfield and Sheva Alomar, two agents of the Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance, who go into the fictional West African country of Kijuju. In the story, Chris has to confront his past by fighting an old enemy, Albert Wesker, who, if you could not tell, is the main antagonist of this game. Look, the only good thing this game has ever provided is that bizarre sequence where Chris punches a boulder for some reason and somehow makes it do what he wants. But everything else about Resident Evil 5 is horrible. It's bad, except for Shiva. She deserves a better game. Everything else, though, dumpster fire of a video game, let's be honest. First off, controls and inventory system. It's very obvious this game wants you to be playing it with somebody else, but it goes about it in a very bad way. Where in its previous installment, Resident Evil 4, you could get bigger inventory to hold your supply of bigger, better guns, but in Resident Evil 5, you can't. You get 9 slots of inventory, and you have to work with that throughout the entire game. That includes ammo, guns, grenades, key items, healing items, everything. And you can stack items, so I can have like multiple healing items in one slot, but if I want like a pistol, and a rifle, and a shotgun, and ammo for all of that, well, no, not allowed to have it. The game tries to alleviate this by letting you have access to Shiva's inventory, which also has 9 slots, bringing your total amount of inventory to a technical 18 slots, but whenever she has in her inventory is what she uses. Kind of like if you were playing Fallout and you give your companions a bunch of items and they'll start using that in battle. So if you give her bad guns, she's not going to be a good fighter to have with you. So it's a mess, it's horrible, and I hate it. And you're probably predicting the future and going, but Daryl, some of these other games you're mentioning also either have a problematic setting or development background or are bad in some other way. And yes, you are right. But do you know what else, despite that, makes them better than Resident Evil 5? At least those games are fun to play. The level design for Resident Evil 5 throughout the entire game is a lot like that island sequence in Resident Evil 4, but it's the whole game. That's it. No balance of survival, horror, and action. No interesting good new mechanics. And in fact, it didn't even barely graze any of the parts of horror that make the Resident Evil series like a horror series. Very much just like action from beginning to end. Like, if it wasn't just for the fact that it was a Resident Evil game, I would barely consider this game to be a horror game. It just it misses all the marks. The story is also very forgettable. I will say I was liking what they were doing with Chris's arc. Chris's relationship with Shiva is building on his guilt for what happened to Jill Valentine, and that was very good, and they wrapped it up pretty well in the final fight. But when we get to Resident Evil 6, they totally throw that development out the window, but we'll save that for when we actually get to Resident Evil 6. We're not going to get to Resident Evil 6 right now, though, because Resident Evil 6 was not the second worst zombie game I ever played. That honor goes to Dead Island 2. Released in 2023 and set 15 years after the events of Dead Island and Dead Island Riptide, you play as one of the 6 main protagonists who find themselves as one of the only few survivors in an infested Los Angeles while being immune to the zombie virus. To put it shortly, this game is bad. Not entirely bad, but it's pretty bad. Although I enjoyed the main protagonist characters, at least the ones I experienced of the main 6, my mom was playing it as well, so she played one different character. I played as Bruno. I forgot the Irish girl's name, but that's who my mom played as. And we were playing this game together because we like the Dead Island series. But like, when it came to like this game's story and character stuff, there was not a lot of things about it I liked. To start, this game has the same problem that I have with Far Cry New Dawn, which although I love Far Cry New Dawn, it feels like an over-glorified DLC for the game they want to make and not a sequel game at all. Dead Island Riptide felt more like a Dead Island 2 than Dead Island 2 did, and just like based off the writing for this game, it's very obvious Dead Island 2 was written to be a poorly done prequel to a bigger game the devs probably wanted to make. Because this game has the least satisfying ending of all the Dead Island games, and that's saying something considering that Dead Island Riptide is not very high on this list at all either. I have not played Escape from Dead Island, so I can't compare those games to that one. I know that game was also poorly received, but I don't know anything about it other than it's a Dead Island game. So there's that. So the game starts off with a plot with you looking for a way to escape LA after the city was put on a quarantine after a bigger, badder zombie outbreak happened. And also I hate the fact that this game takes place in LA. This game is Dead Island. It should be on an island. If I wanted to play a game that was not set on an island themed after being zombies on an island, I would play a better game. And as you're going through the game, you get in contact with a scientist named Reuben Reed, who wants to use your immunity to make a cure. And you also run into a group of, like, I've been just calling them like zombie cultists. They have a name. I don't really care about them. They're also immune, and they have like weird telepathic stuff that they do with your character. But I will be honest, these guys basically do nothing throughout most of the game, and other to be ominous and tell the player about superhuman zombie hybrids that they call Newman, which is like what your character is. And then you get to what I think is probably the worst part of like the writing wise for this game, and that is when you meet Trisha. And it's not specifically Trisha herself. I think Trisha could have been a very interesting character, but her plot is the issue. Trisha is Reed's daughter, and we find out that he purposely released the zombie virus in Los Angeles because he wanted to find all the Newmen, and he uses Trisha's blood as the zombie virus cure, and he just harvests for her, and he turns into a big old zombie, so you gotta kill him. And then Trisha leaves, and you decide to stay behind in LA to go look for her, and the game ends with you having this big fight, single-handedly taking down a big zombie horde. And it's really bad. It's so bad. It's a very unfinished plot. It's not good. They never explain the cult stuff. It's a lot of setup and no reward. It's like, it pretty much the game ends with just like, why did I do any of this? Because it just gives you a whole lot of nothing. Just so much nothing. And you're probably thinking, well, if Dead Island 2 is so bad, then why do I think that Resident Evil 5 is better? Because Dead Island 2, at the very least, is much more fun to play than Resident Evil 5 was. Look, the game makes it obvious it wants you to spend so much time playing this very short game because, like in Far Cry New Dawn, it raises the boss's health and stats to beyond ridiculous levels, so the boss fights take way longer to do. But at least I don't have trouble with the controls. I have fixing and destroying and crafting mechanics for my gear, I can upgrade my inventory, and the game plays fine. Like, it's a fun game to play. If I was somebody who didn't care about the story and stuff, I just wanted a fun game to play, the game is fine. My only nitpick is that it puts some of the mechanics and the weapons crafting from Dying Light into Dead Island, because I know they're both made by the same company, but if I wanted to play a game like Dying Light, I would play Dying Light. I would not be playing Dead Island. I play Dead Island to play Dead Island. I like when my zombie games are not cutters of like each other. Like, I don't want a cookie cutter zombie game. I like my games to be the way different from each other, because then I could play them for specific stuff. I play Dying Light because I want to play Dying Light. I play Dead Island because I want to play Dead Island. I will say though, the Dead Island 2 intro song is very catchy. That's one of the things that I like with the original one too, is that they both have like really catchy intro themes, and I just like really enjoy it. Enough about Dead Island 2, let's get to our next game, and that game is Resident Evil 6. Resident Evil 6 was a game that people told me long before I played the game myself that it was the worst one in the franchise, but if I haven't made it obvious in this video yet, I disagree. I can see why people may not like it. Like Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6 is very action heavy, its more horror aspects are not as horrifying as some of the previous installments of the game. I will say it does its horror better than Resident Evil 5 did, but it does have its issues. Resident Evil 6 is also different from other Resident Evil games I played because this game has 4 different storylines that interconnect with each other. You have Leah and Helena's story, you have Chris and Pierre's, Sherry and Jake's, and Ada's own solo adventure, each filling in the gaps of the story that the one big storyline has, because not everybody gets all the clues together. The main plot of the game is a little confusing. A guy turned his wife into Ada, she became leader of a bioterrorism group with an added identity crisis. I thought it was kind of funny in a like, this is a very stupid plot way. But I did enjoy a lot of the character interactions and the relationships in this game, hence why I like this game a lot better than previously mentioned Resident Evil games. I actually had to play this game a second time to get why people may not like this one, but I also had jumped into this game right after Resident Evil 5. So going back to Resident Evil 5, how bad of a video game do you have to make be for me to think that another bad video game is better? Like, yeah, this is the one that I heard was really bad before I've ever played it. I've never heard anything about Resident Evil 5 before. I've always heard bad stuff about Resident Evil 6, but how bad of a video game do you have to be for me to play that game and then play the one that is considered the worst one and think it's better? Come on, guys. But this one also made me cement my hate for Chris Redfield, and I got so many people get mad at me, but tell me, like, about, like, why do I hate Chris Redfield, and, like, trying to analyze me. I'll tell you why I hate Chris Redfield. He's boring. And his story in Resident Evil 6 is so frustrating, I just cannot enjoy him anymore. Like I said, I enjoyed his development in Resident Evil 5, but like they just throw it out the window in Resident Evil 6. So, in Resident Evil 6, there are multiple new bioterrorist attacks happening through the game, like all the characters are like involved in this. Sherry wants to use Jake, who is Wesker's son, to make a new vaccine, and in Leon's story, the president is assassinated after he plans on revealing the truth about what happened during the events of Resident Evil 2. Ada goes off to do her own thing, working in the shadows to help take down Carla Radames, who is the scientist who turned into and was convinced that she is Ada. And she's also the leader of a new terrorist group called Neo Umbrella, but let's bring this back to Chris. So his story involves another character named Piers, and they go after Carla, who they think is actually Ada, to stop Neo Umbrella's terrorist attacks. But Chris's storyline and character development in this game is so bad. It's so bad. The first half of the game, he and a group of soldiers, along with Piers, are trying to stop Carla Ada, and she kills the soldiers Chris was with by turning them into virus zombies. And Chris gets amnesia and he goes into exile, and then after that he's just an asshole. And to me, this kind of writing feels like the same shit they did with him in Resident Evil 5, but like in a lot worse way. Chris gets like all the characters that die after this point, or even before this point. Like, Chris gets over Pierce's death at the end of the game a lot quicker than he did with these very nameless soldiers. He had a worse cope with these nameless soldiers than the whole time he thought Jill was dead. And I get like, yeah, trauma and all that, and it works differently. But Resident Evil 5 is an over-the-top fictional video game about killing zombies. I think that is a stupid cop-out for a game that's mostly supposed to be action. Like, fucking Chris Redfield copes with Ethan's death better than he copes with these random nameless soldiers' death, and I am right about this. So, that's my Resident Evil 6 rant, and also my I hate Chris Redfield rant. So we're going to go on to our next game that we're going to talk about, which is Dead Island Riptide. And I know a lot of these games so far I've been like talking about the same two franchises, so bear with me again while I talk more about Dead Island. And so, Dead Island Riptide is a 2013 game that is set immediately after the events of the first Dead Island game. Our main characters from the first game, they had taken a helicopter to an offshore ship where they are immediately detained and later awakened to a now infested by zombie ship. The ship crashes and the 4 survivors are now on the island of Palanai, which has also become infected with the zombie virus. They join with a group of non-immune people, and with a couple of new immune survivors, you go across Palanai to take a boat to leave. There's more to the game than that, but this one was a very lukewarm game. I enjoyed the beginning a lot. It was fun, it started strong, but it peters out, and the beginning spark, it leaves in such a contrasting way that I didn't really know I had reached the end of the game until the end credits were rolling. That's how bad it was, at least with like Dead Island the first. That one, you could tell when the game was ending. This one, not so much. But I also did enjoy seeing the 3 other survivors that you could play as more, like just like hanging around at like the main locations you're playing at. The way the game is they make it seem like you're constantly traveling with all 4 of these people no matter where you go in the game, but you're only playing as the one character, so you're like by yourself, even though story-wise you're supposed to be with these 3 other characters you could play as. It makes it like feel more like what they were going for in the first game, that the first game doesn't really make you feel like you're going for, because you could pick like one character, like you play as like Sam B, and then like you just don't realize the other characters are there. I also hate, though, in Dead Island Riptide that you get separated from Kevin and Yurema and then just, like, never find out what happened with them afterwards. Like, okay, we spent time with these characters, now you gotta get rid of them. Like, where are they at? What'd you do with them? The game doesn't do anything with that. Maybe if they ever do a Dead Island 3, but I'm kind of worried what Dead Island 3 would look like. So yeah, overall, Dead Island Riptide remains largely a pretty unremarkable game. And it's not the worst, not the best, but we're going to keep going and start with our next game, which is going to be The Last of Us 2. Now, everybody here has heard of The Last of Us series, and it's Naughty Dog controversies, but unfortunately, this is a zombie game series, so we're going to talk about The Last of Us 2 again. It is a 2020 game set 4 years after the events of the first Last of Us, and in the game, we follow our 2 main protagonists, Ellie and Abby, who are both trapped in a cycle of revenge and guilt. there is a lot happening with this game outside the content, from people fighting over the plot to weird shit-in gamer dudes being like, LGBT too woke or whatever, but overall, with all but one specific reason why this game is so low on my ranking chart, this game is not that bad. It really isn't. The story is mostly solid. I think they should have given us more time to want to root to Abby, probably maybe because it has play as her first instead of Ellie. They could have like fixed with like some of the stuff that like issue-wise with the story. I think if they restructured it a little bit with like having us play as Abby before Ellie, it would have been better. I know they recently put in a chronological mode for the game, but I think we're just not given enough time with Abby at the beginning for us to even like care if she lives or dies. And I'm speaking as somebody who is very like, I love Abby so much. I do think they should have given us more time with her at the beginning of the game than they did. That's just like my opinion. Like, now don't get me wrong, I knew like I don't really care that she killed Joel. I'm not one of those people who are mad at her for killing Joel, because like, yeah, after the end of the first game, that was expected to happen. But I also think with some adjusting, the reaction of his death from like chronically online people wouldn't have been so brutal. Especially towards Laura Bailey, who I didn't think deserved any of the shit she got for playing a character in a video game that she didn't write. Like, hello? Why are we going after voice actors for playing characters? I also enjoyed the storylines of Revenge and how Abby kind of takes up Joel's role in a way with Lev, and it's just pretty good. I really liked a lot of it, and if we do a part 3, I really like the focus to be on Abby and Lev instead of Ellie. That's just my opinion though. But if it wasn't for what the game was based off of, and I could go into it, but there are a lot of other creators who put more research and thought into their own like dissection of the ideas behind the main conflict in The Last of Us 2 that I've pretty much, like, I can make a whole video about that, but like I said, more people who've like done it better than I could have already did, and like I could put like a little brief thing up here that's just like pause to read, that's my thoughts about it, but it would just be like getting into it, it's just gonna be like what everybody else has said, and it's just kicking a dead horse at this point. But like it does keep me from enjoying this game as much as I really would like to, and it's also kind of one of the reasons why I didn't continue season 2 after the TV show. So, yeah. Anyway, we're gonna start with our next one, which is gonna be the weirdest one, but like, hear me out. We're gonna talk about Black Ops. I want to clarify. I have not played the campaigns for these games, but I have played the zombie modes for specifically Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3, and World at War. But I'm going to kind of treat them all as one entity just because they're very similar. I know they are not the same. You don't need to tell me that they're not the same, but I am putting them under one umbrella because the gameplay is very much similar enough that I don't feel like I need to be like, which one is the best one? And if you really want to know, I would have to say 2, only because that's the one that I've played the most between these. I've played World at War once, and I played Black Ops 3 once, but I've played Black Ops 2 zombie mode multiple times. So there you go. Anyway, I don't have anything really much to say about that, but it's pretty fun. It's one of those games where it's like, I want to play a zombie game and shoot and kill zombies, but I don't really want a story-based game with missions and all that. This is the game. There's nothing too glamorous about it. The getting weapons from the crate is randomized, and you can easily get something really bad or really good. It's just like a lot of fun. There's like vending machines with power-ups, and they're like themed after soda, which is also really fun. And like, I also just really like the vibes of 2 the best. It's very good. I like it a lot. But we're going to keep this train going, and we're going to get into another game, The Evil Within 2, a 2017 game that follows Sebastian Castellano after the end of the first Evil Within game. Set 3 years later, the ex-detective is reunited with his ex-co-worker, Julie Kidman, who tells him of his daughter's survival. Sebastian is to go back into a new STEM system his daughter is being used to power in order to save her from the forces inside that wish to use her power for their own gain. Outside, Julie begins her part of the plan to take down the organization that created the STEM system in the first place. I adore the Evil Within series. This was one of my favorite pieces of horror media as a high schooler, and I was so obsessed with the first game. The second one isn't nearly as good in my opinion. The games are very action-packed, but I think the second game lacks the more survival parts I enjoyed from the first game. However, this game isn't horrible. The art is pretty, the monster designs are awesome, and I enjoy Sebastian's continued story and how Julie has more of an involved role in the story, even if she's not in the thick of the action like she used to be. Having villains who are not in the core of the system itself was cool, and it was interesting to see how outside forces could be used to influence the main system. That said, it's definitely not the best game on this list, and I think its main failings are in its story. It doesn't have the same intrigue as the first game, so the horror doesn't really hit as good because we already kind of have a lot of answers if you played the first game beforehand, as the game very much expects you to have. I think you could enjoy this game without knowledge of the first game, but I think like if you're somebody who's like really into story, you'll be very, very lost. And I also don't really like Sebastian's new voice. I'm sorry, I prefer his old one. It doesn't really change too much of the game for me, but it's like one of those things that's noticeable enough that I'm just like, it's not as good as the first one. And I hope they do make a third game because I really want to see what they go more with Julie's story, and I want to see maybe they'll bring back Ruvik because he's my favorite. But enough about that, we're gonna go talk about Minecraft now because Minecraft's on this list. Yeah, I mentioned Minecraft before. That was not a coincidence. Minecraft is very much considered a zombie game, obviously. And you're probably thinking, why Minecraft? And it's got zombies in it. Came out in 2009. You survive in the world, fight zombies, and other stuff. Though, to be honest with Minecraft, it's like one of those games where I only really like enjoying playing it with people or watching other people play it, more so than playing it by myself. And like, yeah, that's it. I don't really have a lot to say about this one other than like, it's Minecraft, so it's on the list. So we're gonna go talk about Telltale's The Walking Dead game. And we're going to treat all 4 seasons of this game as like one rank for this because I don't really want to organize each season into like this chart. I made a whole ranking chart about this. I'll probably throw it up at the end of the video. And I don't really care. I want to see if I like I really don't want to see if I like season 1 of The Walking Dead more or less than Black Ops. So here we go. But if you want to know like which seasons I preferred, I like season 1 the best, and then followed by season 4 and season 3, and then season 2 at the end. You know, there you go. So The Walking Dead game was first released in 2012, and each season has its own plot. Season 1 follows Lee, who, along with a little girl named Clementine and a group of survivors, head to Savannah to find a boat to make a new home on an island. Season 2 follows Clementine as disaster leads her to a new group of survivors as they try to escape a force that's after them. Season 3 follows Javier, who tries to find sanctuary for his niece, nephew, and sister-in-law after his brother's disappearance. Clementine is also a major character into Season 2, in case you guys miss her, but it's okay, because in Season 4, Clementine's story continues as she and her younger brother figure, AJ, find a survivor group made up of other kids, and they have to fight a group that threatens them. I love these games a lot. The story for them all is so good. I have not seen anybody who hasn't cried at the end of Season 1 over Lee's death. It's so great. Lee and Javier are great protagonists in their own right. I know everybody loves Lee. It's hard not to love Lee. He's great. I know some people have mixed opinions about Javier, especially since you can basically cuck his brother. I personally really like Javier as a protagonist, and he's funny, his arc is interesting, and I do like his development. Do I like the cheating arc? No, but the story itself isn't that bad. It's like its own thing, and I enjoy the fact that it gives Clementine this space to like not be the main protagonist for a little bit. However, this game, there's one character in this game that is done so dirty, and that character is Sarah. That is my biggest piece of resentment that I do have for Season 2. Season 2 probably would have been a better game if this game treated that girl better. Like, I like Season 2, but I don't really hate it for anything, but this is the one thing I do hate it for. I'm on Team Sarah deserves better, and I will die on that hill, because that's a neurodivergent child with trauma. She was sheltered and shit. You can't fault her for being how she is. And I think she deserved better, and I hated that whole storyline involving with her and Jane. I think that could have been done better, and like, people are so mean to that poor little girl. But we're going to move on from the Walking Dead game to talk about the original Resident Evil 4. Now, I'm not talking about I keep hitting my metal thing on my desk. We're talking about, not the remake, we're talking about the original Resident Evil 4. So the one that came out in 2005. Follows the story of Leon Kennedy as he goes into rural Spain to rescue the president's daughter Ashley from a cult called Los Illuminados, who have been given the residents in the community a parasite known as Las Plagas. And fun fact, this was my very first Resident Evil game, and I originally played it on the Wii. Now I have it for Switch, so, you know, play differences. I think I kind of prefer playing it on the Wii just because the aiming mechanics were a bit better, but like that's really it. I also played it on VR once. That was a lot of fun. And in all honesty though, this game is only where it's out on my ranking chart just because I happen to have other zombie games on this list that I enjoy more than this one. It's regarded as one of the best Resident Evil games, and it's not really difficult to see why. It's a fun game to play, it balances this horror action perfectly, and it has an engaging story that is very memorable. The only thing I dislike about this game, just like the one thing I would change about this game, is the really sexist writing it has, specifically with like Luis and Ashley. But overall, everything else is perfect. It's a very good game. One of the most perfect zombie games out there. So this next one was super hard for me to do, only because I cannot decide which of these two I like better over the other one. They are kind of tied for me, but in very specifically different reasons. You probably are going to hear this bit and be like, well, it's clearly you like one over the other. But like, I honestly cannot make a decision which one I like better over the other. And because they're part of the same game series, I can just put them all together, and that is specifically both Dying Light and Dying Light 2, which, if you've never heard Dying Light, it's the zombie game where you can do parkour. So the first Dying Light was originally released in 2015. It follows Kyle Crane, who is sent to Haran, a fictional Middle Eastern city that has been quarantined after an infection is released, turning people into zombies. Kyle is bent and is slowly running out of time with limited medicine to keep the infection at bay as he looks for missing research data. But meanwhile, in 2022, the sequel Dying Light 2 is set in the year 2036, which is 15 years after a zombie virus breaks out into the world and causes an apocalypse, and safe havens from the nocturnal dead are shrinking by the day. Aiden Caldwell finds himself one of the only real safe places left, which is the city of Villador, where the zombies, while still inside the city's walls, are not as numerous as most elsewhere. Aiden arrives at the city to search for his missing sister, and during his time there, he also determines who gets control of what lies inside of the city itself. Now, I like these two games for different reasons, and for what one game is strong in, the other one is very lacking. So let's start with the gameplay, which I think is the most neutral thing I could start with. The gameplay of this game is really fun. This game is so much fun. They're genuinely like two of the funnest games I've played just by gameplay alone, and and I judge that specifically of like how much fun it is to just run around in a game without like doing anything, you know, like without having a task to do. Dead Island 2 is a little bit more fun for me than Dead Island 1 in this way, but only because you get a lot of some of the like other more fun toys that take you a bit longer to get in Dying Light. I think I said Dead Island 2 earlier. I meant Dying Light. And you get like some of the more fun stuff like the parachute and the grappling hook and things like that in Dying Light 2 a lot quicker than you do in Dying Light 1, and I think that makes it a little bit more fun for me. But both games do have like two big contrasting things that make them different, and also like hence makes it kind of hard because like I said, what one game does well, the other game doesn't do as well. The story for Dying Light 1 is better than in Dying Light 2. In Dying Light 1, it's easy to follow and doesn't get weird in like a confusing way, but in Dying Light 2, the story could have been so much better. And I'm gonna have to explain why, but the main antagonist in Dying Light 2 wants to cure Mia, who is Aiden's sister, of a virus she has, and he needs to launch missiles to access the like facility that he needs to cure her, but they will launch nukes to blow up the city. And you have to choose between saving a friend you made named Lawan or Mia in the end. Here's the kicker: if you pick saving Lawan, it doesn't clarify if Mia dies or not in the end. I think she does, regardless of whatever decision you make. But you end up in that case, you just end up killing a bunch of people for no reason. There's also some other weird character right here, because if you choose to save Mia, Lawan still lives, but it implies that she would die, but no, she still lives, and then you leave the city with her, but her whole arc is about how she wants to, like, there was like this like group of like runners, I forgot what their name was, but like she wanted to like rebuild them, and it's like, don't you want to stay in Villador to do that? You make the group and then you're put in charge of it and then you just leave it? I don't get it. However, the aesthetic for Dying Light 2 is so much better than Dying Light 1. My favorite for like any kind of post-apocalyptic setting. I love how it is. It's like, it's super like, it's greenery, it's like overgrowth. It's just done so well. Dying Light 1 and its like aesthetic is very Dead Island-esque, which is completely understandable because both games are set during the outbreak rather than afterwards. And again, if you ignore how broken and glitchy Dying Light 2 is, the parkour aspects of the game are very nice and clean, just like a tiny step up from where they were at Dying Light 1. So it's like, yeah, like I love Dying Light 2 for the art and like how fun and easy it is to navigate, but I like Dying Light 1 better because I really like the story a lot better for that one. So it's just like hard to decide between those two, but it's okay because I do know the order for the rest of these, so we're going to talk about Dead Island. Speaking of Dead Island, Dead Island was a game released in 2011. It follows the story of 4 survivors who get bitten after a zombie virus was released on the island of Bonoi. With the help of a voice on the radio and various other survivors they meet, the group has to make their way to said voice in order to escape the zombies for good. And with my description for Dead Island Riptide earlier, you can tell it doesn't go that way, but hey, you can't blame them for trying. I really enjoyed this game a lot. It was my first real zombie game I ever played, and even though it didn't age the best, it's still a very enjoyable game now. It's a lot of fun to play, the combat plays well, and even after multiple following games, it still remains the strongest game in the series. It also has like the most memorable characters. We have our protagonists, Sam B, Jean May, Logan Carter, and Perna Jackson, but they're in multiple games, and they don't count. The other NPCs are the like compared to like characters, because like I said, those guys are in the Riptide as well. Sam B is also in Dead Island 2. I don't know about Escape from Dead Island, so I can't answer for that, but the other NPCs from the first game are pretty memorable to me, so we spent a lot of time with them, and I think it just does what Dead Island 2 fails to do in terms of its like emotional beats and its like character writing. So it's like, yeah, and like I said with Dead Island 2, its theme song is very catchy. Very catchy theme song. Very hard to forget it. But next up, we're going to talk about Resident Evil 2. I love it, my beloved. We are specifically talking about the remake, not the original. I have not played the original. Resident Evil 2 was released in 2012, where we follow Claire Redfield and Leon Kennedy as they arrive in Raccoon City, where a zombie virus outbreak has happened. The two of them, separated on their own adventures, must discover the source of the outbreak and escape. I never got to play the original version of Resident Evil 2, but I love the remake. And despite the number of times I have to bring up Chris Redfield, I, on the other hand, love Claire Redfield. She is my baby girl. I adore her. Please give her more games. Yes, I know Code Veronica exists. I never played it. Give Claire more games anyway. She deserves it. I love this game so much. Everything about it is basically perfect. It's not the most fun to play control-wise, but it does its horror so well throughout the whole game, even in its most action-packed parts, and it just completely remains terrifying consistently. Even when you get like all these like all sorts of weapons and you're fine. It's so perfect. The characters are memorable, the zombies, the gross, the story is awesome. I just love everything it does. It's a perfect game. It's so refreshing to play because I managed to play it after Resident Evil 6, which is more on the action side compared to some of the other games in this franchise. I watched somebody else play it before I got to play it to myself because it takes me forever to play the shiny new video games that come out. Someday I will go out of my way to go get Claire Obscure. I have not done that yet, but I really want to. And I'm too busy doing things, so there we go. But we're going to stop talking about Resident Evil 2 and go on to our next Resident Evil game on this list, which is Resident Evil 7. Shout out to one of my favorite tortured video game protagonist men, Ethan Winters. I love him in this game so much. Released in 2017, Resident Evil 7 follows Ethan Winters, who searches for his missing wife, Mia, after she disappeared in a shipwreck 3 years ago. Now stuck in an isolated Louisiana home, Ethan has to look for his wife, discover the nature of her work, and how to save both her and himself. This game is just the best of the best when it comes to the kind of survival horror I love. It combines the action with the survival, and it takes your weapons, even in the beginning of the game when you're only armed with a tiny little shitty knife, This game constantly delivers, and it's so well. It makes you terrified throughout it, no matter like how good of a person you like become, like action-wise and like buffed up with all these weapons and guns and stuff. It just like consistently goes and like ups and ups and ups on the horror factor, despite the fact that you could basically are a walking militia. The one thing is like, yeah, the model animations are very uncanny in this game, but the nature of the game and the story, it fits very well. They certainly improved them in the later games that come out after this one, but the vibes just like are so immaculate throughout it. I also adore Ethan as a protagonist. He's sassy and fun, and the big thing that makes him so funny to me is that like with all these previous main Resident Evil protagonists who are like agents and scientists and cops and people who've been through this shit before and they got high military special ops jobs because of it, Ethan is literally just some guy. It is one of the most endearing things to me about him being a survival horror protagonist. He's just a guy, and it's 10 out of 10 character. I also think it's just so funny that he's like completely faceless, even though he has like a model for his face. They just never show it. Like they easily could have done the Outlast thing where the models don't have heads, but like they didn't, and it's very good. It's so fun. But enough about Resident Evil 7, because we need to talk about Resident Evil 4 again, but this time we're going to talk about the remake. Hey, I did play that one. I don't think we need to re-summarize the plot of Resident Evil 4, but the 2023 remake of it is perhaps the only time I can say that they made a near perfect game somehow even better. All the characters in this version of the game feel more fleshed out, it's still just as fun to play, the writing feels a bit more solid, and the redesigns for the characters are not that bad. If any company wanted to remake any of their old games, the way Resident Evil 4 Remake went with it is how I would go about with it. I do miss some of the funny back and forth bickering between Leon and Salazar that the original game had, but because they always made me laugh, and so like I was very sad when we didn't get that. But like the one thing that is a big major improvement is how they developed Luis in this game. In the original, when he died, I was just kind of like meh about it. He showed up, he was weird to Ashley, and he helped out a little bit, but at the end of the day, he was like a pretty forgettable character. And what I like about the remake is that they made him a much more like impactful character in the story. He feels like he has the stakes in it. He's like trying to save himself, but his actions are also driven by his guilt for the stuff that he did. And he does what he can to do to save Ashley and Leon, and overall, it just like, it felt like a much more solid writing for a character who wasn't really doing much in the original game that I remember. And so like this time around though, when he does die, I was sad about it. This is the kind of writing that I like when you're gonna rewrite a character for like a remake. So we're gonna talk about our next game, which is The Last of Us, the first one. And we all know this one, but for those who don't, this is a 2013 game that follows Joel Miller and Ellie Williams. Ellie may be the cure for mankind because she is immune from the cordyceps virus, and Joel has taken her across the country to an organization called the Fireflies, who may be able to make a cure and save mankind. Despite my gripes with the creator of the game, this is one of the best video games I ever played. The story is very good, the game is fun. I adore the environmental storytelling, and Ellie and Joel's relationship is one of the more fascinating ones between video game characters I've seen. And even for a game that was released in 2013, I still think the art holds up in my opinion. Though there are remasters of those who might like it. Like the Dying Light 2, the aesthetic for this game is phenomenal, and I could sit in the scenery alone for hours, just walking around in the game. Unfortunately, this game is a lot more linear than Dying Light 2, so you can't really do that, but yeah. A lot of what I enjoyed with The Last of Us is I really like exploring. It also handles its emotional beats well. I enjoy how it lets you sit for a moment with some of its more emotionally impactful moments, rather than just immediately jumping straight into another round of crazy gunfights and fighting zombies. You're given a moment to feel what the characters are feeling, and when a scene changes or a time skip happens, you're still left to not only with those like feelings, but just like a taste of the mood that follows with the next scene. Very nice. So overall, I would say this game does its pacing very good, and minus a few things that I think this game could fix, it's pretty solid all the way through. But now we're going to talk about the original Evil Within. And I love this game so much. It is like the game I would push is like a perfect balance between psychological horror and whack storytelling. I love it. The Evil Within is a 2014 game that follows Sebastian Castellano after a call for a mass murder at the Beacon Mental Hospital. After arriving there, along with his fellow detectives Joseph and Julie, the trio find their world torn apart, seemingly controlled by a mysterious figure only known as Ruvik. I adore this game so much, and it's still one of the ones that I get the most excited about when I hear things about it. It's also one of those ones where people watching this are probably like, you like this game over some of these, but like, some of these games were more better received, and I'm just gonna say, I have taste. And also, this game consumed like a whole year of my life. I cannot have this game not be as high on this list as it is. This game is so near and dear to me. I have a corkboard on my wall I call my blurbo wall, and when I got a new blurbo, I will draw them and I will put them on the wall, and I will remove them sometimes when the feelings of being a blurbo start going away. But I have art from like 10 years ago still on that wall of Ruvik and Leslie, and it's just hanging there. That's like how much I love this game. So I also like made a whole silly video about Sexy Lake's monster lady shade, so like yeah. That's also a thing that exists. I do wish some of the lore for this game wasn't hidden behind DLC though. That's like my one complaint with this game. I was tearing through the internet as a kid looking for all the lore, and some of the time who didn't have a job and any funds to like get it, I didn't have the money for the DLC. It also sucked because of how much stuff is relevant to the Evil Within 2. I'm like, that's fine, but Let's Plays are there, they exist, I could just go watch them online. And I love how this game could just like throw you into these intense, terrifying moments, and although it's like mostly an action-packed game, it retains some of its like scary survival stuff in it. It's so good. And sometimes like it'll feature puzzles that don't just like end with you shooting the thing. I also need to believe that Ruvik and Leslie are still out there. I hope this game gets a third game. I want them back. I want to see what they're up to. They're my sillies. I want to see what happened to them. I want to know. I need my lore. I know I read somewhere recently that they weren't planning on making another game, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, no, I need it. I want it. Please. But we are almost done with this list, but we are not quite there yet because we gotta talk about Resident Evil 8 first. So I played through this game in like 3 days, and I was utterly devastated in a way that I want a story to leave me. So let's talk about this one. Resident Evil 8 released in 2021, and it follows as a sequel to Resident Evil 7. Set 3 years after reuniting with his wife and moving to Europe, now with a daughter added to their family, Ethan is betrayed by Chris. With Mia dead, his daughter missing, and being stuck in a village swarmed with creatures, Ethan has to fight 4 lords that rule the village and their leader, Miranda. This game is so good. It's so good. My only like nitpick, and it's a very, very small nitpick, but it's not as like survival horror as much as Resident Evil 7 is, which doesn't really affect how much I enjoy the game. It's just kind of like, oh, it's a little bit more action-packed than like Resident Evil 7 is, but it's fine. It's fine. Like, the story is amazing, the characters are awesome, and I'm going to be that guy. I enjoyed Chris's writing in this game. It was good. I had some people get mad at me for making a joke video about how glad I am Chris is finally the villain he was always meant to be on TikTok, but it was so worth it. I don't care. I don't like Chris Redfield, but I can admit when somebody does a good writing thing. Unfortunately, I don't think it can save Chris. I just hope they don't make their mistake with Resident Evil 9 when that comes out and include him in the game and then throw out his development again. Just as a note, I've been avoiding anything about Resident Evil 9 because when I do go play that, I want to go play it without knowing what's going to happen in it, so shh. This game also plays really nice and makes some improvements from Resident Evil 7, but very obviously is testing some stuff out for the Resident Evil 4 remake, which, if you haven't been following along, it came out after this game did. I honestly prefer the inventory setup that Resident Evil 4 has versus the one they did with Resident Evil 7, so if anything, it just upped my enjoyment of the game. Resident Evil 8 aesthetic is also just like so good, very gothic, very fairy tale, very horror, just very refreshing thing to come out of the Resident Evil series. Ethan's development is very good. I watched someone play the DLC for this game, and I love what they did with his daughter Rosemary. And yeah, just almost perfect game. However, there is one game, which again, not 100% perfect, is probably going to be the only zombie game that I've played that has basically everything that I want from a zombie game. And that zombie game is Days Gone. So Days Gone is a game that came out in 2019, and although it has some issues, it's probably the best zombie game I've played in terms of like everything that I specifically want from a zombie game. We follow Deacon St. John, one of the last members of a biker gang called the Mongrels, along with his best friend Boozer. Deacon is desperate to leave his past behind, the people in Oregon, his home, and the memories of his now dead wife, but things become more complicated when Boozer gets injured and they become hunted, and even more so when the organization known as Nero returns, leading to maybe just the fact that Deacon's wife Sarah might not be dead? Maybe, possibly? I don't know. Spoiler alert, she is not dead. This game has its ups and downs, so I'm gonna start off by why I'm gonna explain why this is probably the best zombie game I've played, even though like some of the last couple games I've mentioned are arguably a lot better written. And the first thing is because like my whole personal taste in zombie media and like realism, I like zombie media that feels believable, and in video games it doesn't matter so much because it's a game and I don't really care that zombies can use guns or werewolves or whatever. I just want it to be fun, but it also depends on like when the game takes place. The Last of Us 2, Dying Light 2, and Days Gone get away with it because of how they organize their big tough more mutant zombies. Like, the Rat King in The Last of Us 2 is, like, a bunch of clickers that grew together, and we knew that the older the clicker is, the harder they are to kill because of all the growth, so, like, that, like, comes from the cordyceps fungus, so naturally, yeah, of course they could grow together, and they become harder to kill, so woo. Dying Light 2, we don't get, like, these gigantic mutant zombies that are, like, more mutant than the big hard ones that are already introduced in the game to kill, so it's, like, it's fine. It doesn't really need to outdo itself, because it's kind of already, like, we got this big thing, and that's, like, the worst it could get. Days Gone kind of has the same thing, where it slowly introduces harder to kill zombies that have some more difficult abilities to deal with, but it doesn't randomly give us something like a Resident Evil or the Evil Within boss. If I was to play a post-apocalyptic game like Days Gone with stuff like that, I probably would be annoyed with it. It's also kind of like one of the reasons why I can't really just get into like the Resident Evil movies, but it's fine. The lore also adds on to explain this through Nero. The zombies are affected with the virus, and part of Nero's involvement in the story is that they're researching how the virus is mutating, changing how it affects different zombies and their behaviors. Can I say I am so glad that we also have a zombie series that recognizes that animals are also a thing, and we could get some like zombie animals. I know it's just limited to bears and wolves and crows, and I know Resident Evil technically does this as well as a little bit in the Evil Within, but it's refreshing to see that in like a non, like, I don't know if I would count like Resident Evil and like what I'm thinking of, but like I'm thinking of like Game of Thrones, where in the book specifically they mention like how a lot of the White Walkers are not just people, they're also animals. So like that, like I feel like with like a lot of zombie media, we don't talk about like if animals can turn into zombies, and I think that it's cool that Days Gone has like legitimate like enemies that are like zombie animals that could just come out of nowhere and ruin your day. And it's like also like kind of stupid to think that like, oh, a zombie virus can't affect an animal when there's like literally like similar zombie like parasites and diseases that do affect animals out there. I mean, cordyceps was not something that was invented by The Last of Us. It is very much a real fungus that affects insects. And I also just really like how the zombies work in this game. They feel like zombies, and they're not like the Walking Dead kind of zombies, but they take the concept of horde of zombies and make it a whole thing in this game. And it's such an interesting way to add more to this open world to make things terrifying. Like, I legitimately screamed once or twice while playing Days Gone when I would like go past a cave or up a hill, and I would just see a huge wave of zombies coming straight for me. It's very good. It's fun in the most horrifying way. The hordes also have like personalities, so they'll behave differently, and it just like acts like a very fun and terrifying puzzle to clear them out. I also love the scenery in this game. Oregon is pretty, and I love the setting, and the aesthetic of this game is just very nice. It's very good. I got those nice post-apocalyptic vibes I like. This game only happens like 2 years after the apocalypse starts, so it's not as overgrown as I'd like it to be, but it's very nice with what they got. I also really like Deacon. He's not the most amazingly original protagonist, but he is like the funniest one next to Ethan Winters, and I'm going to explain why. This guy really wants to be so edgy and so moody, so bad. Sons of Anarchy main protagonist vibes. He's like, oh, my wife's dead and you shouldn't trust anyone and I don't care about people, just me and Boozer and the world sucks and I'm such an loner, asshole drifter guy. But in reality, he's got like the personality of a very anxious chihuahua. Which is how I was describing it to my friends while I was playing this game. He gets like really stuttery, he gets nervous, he's like talked over super easily. He's in the same breath of like him being like, I don't care, whatever. He's like immediately like so contradictive, and he's just like, no, I care. And it's so funny. Like, there's like this like one girl he meets named Lisa who he has to like bring to this one settlement, and through it he's just like, it's just a job, whatever. And then like the moment he brings her back to camp, he's like very ride or die for her. Like, that's a kid, you better treat her nice or I will kick your ass, grandma. He's not like Joel Miller, but he's very much just like the vibes of like a Chihuahua who believes he should be like a German Shepherd or something, but instead he's like a small dog who gets shoved into a purse and carried around. It's so funny. He's supposed to be like a brutal ex-military biker guy, and he's supposed to be like so cool, but he's just such an anxious dude, and it's just so funny. He's such a funny character. And like, I think a lot of the other characters are kind of like in the same way of just like this guy's got like stuff going on, but like his wife could probably pick him up, put him in her purse, and she would just carry him around while she goes shopping, and she probably has already done that. I don't know. But I do want to get into the story because I think this is where the game is the weakest at, and the story is not bad. It makes sense. You can follow the plot and the character motivations. It keeps you engaged and hooked. But it does a lot of like little mistakes I'm always worried about in my writing, and then I think about how this game does it, and I go like, no, actually, I think I might be good on that front. And I'm gonna get into it. So the first thing is with the Ripper storyline, specifically the like Carlos reveal. The Rippers are like a cult who worship zombies, and in Days Gone they're called freaks, and the Rippers want to be just like them. They don't like technology, they don't like tattoos, they scratch themselves up to look as close to the freaks as they can, at least visually, and the leader of the group, Carlos, used to be known as a guy named Jesse, who was once in the biker club that Deacon was a part of. But he was kicked out because he killed another member over drugs, and his mongrel tattoo was burned off. It's cool. It's a good backstory. It explains why they were targeting Boozer and Deacon, and it explains like, you know, why Carlos is so interested in them. It's a very good motivation setup. Here's the thing the game doesn't do though. This would have been a cool reveal. This would have been an awesome plot twist. This game does not communicate with us who this person is until after we meet this person. We're introduced to Carlos, leader of the Rippers. We do not know who the fuck this Jesse guy is at all. Like, this game does not communicate. Like, occasionally Deacon and Boozer will talk about like past members of their group and stuff that happened in the past. Like, I specifically remember before the Carlos reveal, only remember them talking about a guy named Jack, and little bits of like backstory involving this guy named Jack. And this happens like when they're like driving bikes around. So this isn't like cutscene stuff. Like, they don't shove this stuff in your face. This is kind of like, you could like miss it really easily if you're not paying attention. So when they got to the reveal of Carlos being in like the mongrels, I was like, oh, so this must be Jack. And like, last time I heard, this guy was in prison. Is he like out on a vengeance quest for some reason? But then they go like, oh shit, it's Jesse, and I have to go, who the fuck is Jesse? Because the game certainly doesn't tell you. I had to go on Wikipedia to find that information out. By the way, never even mentioned it after we found out that Carlos was this weird Jesse guy. And it also has like other communication problems that are part of the plot, but it has the other one that isn't big. It's me being very nitpicky, but it very much has me going, these characters are either stupid, blind, or both. So, Deacon is covered in tattoos, but he specifically has one on his neck of his wife's name, which her name is Sarah. And the thing is super obvious. It's out in the open. He never bothers hiding it. He like goes out of his way to hide that he's in a biker gang at one point, which I think is really funny because he also doesn't tell people he's looking for his wife at this point, but he has her name tattooed on his neck. And we find out that Sarah is alive and she's with a military nut group that has like a whole no dating policy. So Deacon has to hide that he's looking for his wife, and so he eventually runs into the captain, like a captain of the group. It's not I forgot the guy's name, but he's like not the leader of the group. He's like a leader of an outpost, but like not the leader of the group. And he tells this guy like, yeah, I'm looking for my wife, and he like lies. He's like, my wife's name is Beth, or like he says that his wife is dead, and like he's like, oh yeah, my wife's name is Beth, and she died, but he has like his wife's name tattooed on his neck, and nobody like asks him about it. And by the way, the leader of the group does make a big deal about tattoos, and he specifically makes a big deal about one of Deacon's tattoos, because Deacon has like a military tattoo on his hand, and Deacon only got like a pass on his because he's like, oh, you're a military man, we're gonna make you a corporal in my group, like, you know, military leader guy has like issues. It's very obvious. And they introduce him to Sarah, and it's like, and like Sarah's like, I want to talk to him privately, and then she's like, oh my god, you're alive. Okay, well, I'm in this military group and I am a lieutenant in this group, so but we can't tell people that we are married, so woo. So, but here's the thing. So eventually Deacon gets in trouble with this military group, and the captain character defects, and he saves Deacon in the process. And the captain guy points out, he's like, so you were here looking for your wife, but your wife's name is not Sarah, it's not Beth, it's Sarah, isn't it? And Deacon's like, yeah, how did you figure that out? And like while they're doing it, they have like a close-up of his face, and you could clearly see that he has Sarah's name tattooed on him. And the captain guy, he doesn't go like, I know you are lying about your wife's name because it's tattooed on the visible tattoo on your neck that says Sarah, like the lieutenant whose name is also Sarah. And these people do know her name. She does not lie to them about her name. He goes, I knew Sarah was your wife because I saw the tattoo on your back of the Mongrels logo, and it looks like this ring that the leader of the group took from Sarah, and then he gave it to me. And they had the audacity to have this whole scene happen where you could clearly see just like a very clean face shot of Deacon with the big like visible Sarah tattoo on his neck. And all I can think of how blind and stupid these characters are. But besides that, this game is very good. I enjoyed it a lot. It has a final twist. It has a very good opener to a possible sequel, and I hope they do make a second Days Gone someday. And that's why I also think this is the best zombie game on this list, just because it does everything I want from a zombie game. It just needs a stronger story in the future. And I hope it does do that. And if you disagree with me, like I said, you were right to your opinions, but I know I'm right. And that's the end of this video. It's a bit of a big one, but it was a lot of fun to do this. I wanted to do something fun for Halloween, and I've always been wanting to talk about zombies on a video, so we were talking about zombie video games I enjoy. And here is just like, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Next month's video is going to also be art related. I'm doing a video about tracing and why it can sometimes not be problematic. So if that's interesting to you, you should stick around to watch that. Next month's video is going to also be art related. Do without art for that one. And yeah, so we're going to be doing that. If you like what I do, you could consider subscribing. I've been thinking about video ideas for the future, and I want to get into more OC writing stuff and to talk about my characters, but also allow you guys to maybe think more about how you want to write characters. I am thinking outside of what I can do besides storytime stuff, because sometimes people just end up running out of those. And also, if you like my OCs already and you want to see more stuff with them, I have a webcomic. In Harmony is on its 4th chapter, where our character Joel is taking a walk through the woods and an ill-fated photography assignment. Wonder what that's gonna be about. Only good things can happen with that, so if you want to see where it'll go, consider reading In Harmony on inharmony.the-comic.org, and if you already are a reader, consider subscribing to my Patreon, where I do things such as post early access to pages and sketch pages, and I also post like animation clips for animations I'm working on. I had just released an animatic for 2 of my characters, and my patrons had gotten a clip of it a lot longer before you guys got to see the full thing. That's exciting. So if you want stuff like that, you could go on to my Patreon and, you know, become a patron, and it helps, like, me do shit. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye!